The big mistake beginners make.
And today's topic is vacuum marks or no vacuum marks, cleaning lines or no cleaning lines. Here we have an example of no cleaning lines. And here we have a different version. Which do you prefer? And this is what I prefer. Clean, neat, uniform in appearance. What I call the professional look, the better alternative.
Are you a beginner? Are you putting these clean lines in the floor mats of your customers' cars? I used to before I knew better, because I want to teach you, a beginner, if you are a beginner, something that I wish someone would have taught me as a beginner when I was a beginner. And more importantly, for a beginner who is starting their own detailing business or who has recently started their own detailing business. But let me separate you as a beginner into two separate categories: those that do and those that don't. What am I referring to? Clean lines. That's what my employees and I used to call them. After we would shampoo the floor mat, we would put these distinct and deliberate lines into the floor mats, and we called them clean lines. Now, if you are part of the group that doesn't put these in, then you needn't do anything. Unless, of course, you've never even heard of these or seen these. Any trip onto the internet will only confirm what I'm displaying here, because there's many guys that will display this, they will show this, they will even highlight this as some kind of badge of honor of like, oh, check me out. Look what I did. I'm deliberate. I am nailing the details by putting these clean lines into the floor mats of my customers' cars. Because after all, the absence of clean lines is boring, and nobody likes boring. The absence of clean lines is ordinary, and nobody wants to be ordinary, because there's nothing worse in life than being ordinary. Yes, an obscure reference from a very iconic movie, American Beauty. One of my favorites. But let's come full circle and identify the big mistake that many beginners make. To be even more precise, the subject is the display of the mistake, not the mistake itself. But what does that even mean? The mistake is a two-parter. The first mistake bleeds into the second mistake. The first mistake: does your customer want these clean lines put into their floor mats? If you're taking the time to do it, is your customer even going to value it? If they don't value it, then why are you doing it? After all, it does require some time and effort. But let me take this a step further. What if you found out that not only does your customer not value it, but they actually hate it? They don't like it. They don't want them. And so much so that after you leave as the detailer and you've now just installed these cool clean lines into the floor mats, they hate it so much that they take the time to try to remove them, only to find out that they can't remove them. You're like, what? What do you mean they can't remove them? Exactly. But let me explain. See, they don't just wipe away. Think of clean lines, and let me make a distinction. For example, in your house, when you vacuum the carpeting, you're working on dry carpeting. And those lines or those vacuum lines or the clean lines, whatever you want to call them, there is no official term for them. You are putting those in there with your vacuum cleaner. On dry carpeting, that is the big difference. Dry versus damp. So as detailers, when we install these clean lines or vacuum lines or detail lines in the floor mats, we are installing them when the floor mat is damp, after we have pre-vacuumed and then shampoo the carpeting or the floor mat. It's now damp. And now we go and we install these ornate, embellishment, artistic displays of detailing prowess. The point is you've got dry carpeting with your vacuum cleaner, not permanent at all. And then you've got clean lines put in on damp carpeting or floor mats, semi-permanent. You can think of this like wet cement. When cement is wet, you can pretty much do anything you want with it. Once it dries, it's permanent. No longer can it be reversed. It's permanent. Now, this is not me suggesting that if you do this, that those lines are permanent, as in permanently there forever. They're not. What you need to understand is a couple of things. One, your customer may not appreciate it. Two, they are semi-permanent. which is unless you've ever had the displeasure of trying to remove them from a previous detailer who left them, you will underestimate just how hard it is to remove them permanently, to either create a new pattern or to create a pattern of no pattern, which is the pattern that I prefer, which is no pattern, a complete uniform appearance to the floor mat itself. Point is it is very difficult, much more difficult than you would imagine unless you have firsthand experience, which in fact I do. I have been the second or third or fourth or whatever detailer I was in the lineup, but the point is I've rolled up to a car, the previous detailer put these clean lines into the floor mat because I hate them. Yes, I hate them. I used to like them, now I don't. Now I actually hate them because I want to create a perfectly uniform appearance to the floor mat and the carpeting. It is really, really hard to remove them. And by remove them, I don't just mean diminish their appearance, I mean remove them 100%. It's harder than you can imagine. But really, I'm trying to illustrate a couple of points here. One of them, if you're working for a person, which you would be as a professional detailer, have you taken their opinion? It is their car after all. Have you asked them? I know as a beginner, when I used to do this, I never asked. I just did it. And not once did I ever have a customer come out during the final inspection and say, "Wow, Darren, what's with the marks on my floor mats? I don't really like that. I'd like it if you now remove them." Not once did that ever happen, which I find kind of perplexing, because if I was me back then hiring a detailer to detail my car and I came out and I saw those marks in my floor mats, I'd be like, hell no, that ain't sticking, remove those marks. But it never happened. It wasn't until I had the rude awakening, the rude objective awareness presented to me by another customer. So I rolled up to the house, met the customer, saw the car. We went back and forth, asking and answering the preliminary pre-inspection, as I call it. And they said, "Oh yeah, the previous detailer did this, did that, didn't do this, didn't do that. And oh, by the way, they left these silly marks in my floor mats and I hate them. You don't do that, do you?" And in that moment, it's just like, oh, hell no, I would never do that. That's not what I said. That was my internal dialogue, because I was in fact doing that. And now I knew better. And I thought, oh my God, there really is customers that don't like this. There's customers that don't appreciate this. There's customers that don't value this. And in fact, there's customers that are annoyed by it. And there I was, having experience and yet being so unaware. To me now seems like a glaring obvious. And now I'm making it aware to you as a beginner, if you are a beginner and you are doing it. It doesn't mean you have to stop doing it, but maybe you'll come to a new conclusion, an alternate conclusion after watching this video. I don't know. But it was at that point that the new operating rule of Auto Fetish Detail became this. Okay guys, no more clean lines. The new rule is a uniform appearance, as in no pattern, the absence of any pattern. I want a completely uniformed carpet floor mat area, which meant after your final shampooing and vacuuming that you brushed it in one direction based on the visual appearance, which is kind of a nuance of detailing. Sometimes the carpeting can look cleaner if it's brushed one direction versus the other direction. So you have to decide in the moment which is the best direction, and you will brush everything uniformly in that direction to create a true uniform appearance. That became the new operating rule of Auto Fetish Detail. Now I realize that this might in fact seem like an over-dramatization. I can assure you it's not. It was a rude awakening for me when I had to remove those lines, those clean lines put in by a previous detailer. I thought, wow, this is perplexing. Who would have thought they would become that permanent? Who would have thought it would become that difficult to remove those lines 100%? And by the way, not all lines are created equal. There are plenty of guys out there that should display their artistic creativity in other ways, because A, they're not getting their lines uniform to begin with. Their pattern that they're created is not uniform in appearance, and they kind of look like a third grader that hasn't learned how to color within the lines. And so I could dissect that moment in a lot of different ways, which leads me to a few key points of the video. 1, I hate those marks. 2, they're really hard to remove after the fact. 3, your customer may in fact not appreciate them. Not appreciate them to the point that they're actually annoyed by them. And if that's the case, what's the chances of this customer calling you after the fact for a second detailing appointment, never mind a third detailing appointment? I suspect, because probably like myself, you're not taking a poll. You're not asking the customer, hey, by the way, what we do after we shampoo the floor mats is we like to put these deliberate marks into your floor mats that highlights our display of attention to detail, our deliberate attention to detail. Do you in fact like that, prefer that, or want that? I'm pretty certain none of you are taking that poll. And how's that for the cruel irony of the moment is that there I was thinking I'm being unique, different, not ordinary, by putting these special lines into the floor mat, showing my deliberate attention to the details, thinking that I'm separating myself from the competition, when in fact, likely I was annoying many of my customers. And once again, I'm very surprised none of them ever said anything, but they didn't. With that said, I know there will be many people that will watch this that aren't beginner detailers or have no desire to start their own detailing business, but you will have formulated an opinion. Lines, no lines, these kinds of lines, those kinds of lines, you will have formed an opinion. I would like to know what your opinion is. More specifically, not only what you prefer, but why you prefer what you prefer. Lines, no lines. Why lines? Why no lines? So elaborate for us. And it's not just for me, but it's for any guy that comes in after the fact so that they can learn, because at a level, this is kind of me gathering a consensus from the public. And if you are a guy or a girl looking to start your own detailing business, I actually have a smarter way to start. It's what I call my smart startup. A smarter way to start your own detailing business. You can go to the description box below where you will find a link to my website, detailvault.com, where you can be put on the wait list, and I will notify you when I release my smart startup, a smarter way to start. You can find that in the description box below. And until then, I will see you on the next video.